Generation World podcast with your host, Michael Fareed. All right, welcome back to the Lead Generation World podcast. I am your host, Michael Fareed. Thanks again for listening in. This is episode numero dos. We had our first episode launch last week with our good friend Michael Eshelman from Jornaya. For those that listened in, thank you. For those that didn't, it's on SoundCloud, or you can go to leadgenerationworld.com, scroll down a little bit. You'll be able to find it there, and listen in. It's got some good information about data, mortgage trends around purchase and refinance, and all kinds of cool stuff. One thing about Jornaya, which is pretty exciting, is that they do have a lot of visibility in what's happening out there online when it comes to consumer behavior. So really cool stuff. But today we've got a special guest, Sean Fenlon of Meta42 and Meta42. If you know Sean, he was also a co-founder at Double Positive. And our relationship goes back quite a ways. And I'm really excited to have him on the show today. We're going to be able to sort of walk back through memory lane a little bit on his journey through the ecosystem. So that'll be coming up in just a minute. I want to thank everybody who's supporting the efforts around Lead Generation World. We, the response has been so good from buyers across multiple verticals that understand what we're going to be doing with regards to our discussion sessions and workshops, and it's really exciting. We've got sponsorships on board. I want to thank those companies that have took the leap in being a part of the inaugural conference show. We've got Whitel, Digital Media Solutions. We've got Bobberdo.com. We've got WarmTransfer.com. We've got Teledrips on board, and we've got a bunch of companies that are coming on board too. If you're interested in participating in this event coming up, please reach out to us at leadgenerationworld.com, and you can fill out the form or use the phone number at the website, and we'll be able to get right back to you. Also, I should probably add that, if you want to participate on this podcast, feel free to reach out to me. Same way. Go to leadgenerationworld.com. You can fill out a contact form or use the phone number, and we can talk about ways to get you involved. So I want to go ahead and get this podcast started. Like I said, I've got Sean Fenlon here with us today. Sean is a industry veteran that has really seen the ecosystem grow and mature in a lot of different ways. So at this time, I want to welcome Sean to the show.
All right, everyone. I've got Sean Fenlon here today, who I think I've known for just over 15 years. He's, without a question, an industry veteran. That's been in Legion for what, 20 years, Sean?
Yeah, a couple of decades.
Yeah. So I mean, you're definitely a veteran in the industry. Sean has been in a number of different opportunities and companies and channels, but it has always been a prominent fixture in the Lead Gen ecosystem. I want to go back to 1990 when you graduated from Townsend University with a bachelor's in music. What were you doing in 1990, and where did this bachelor's in music come from?
Oh, wow. Great question. I was a chronic underachiever in high school, and, all my friends were going to college. And if college was just going to be more high school, I probably wouldn't have gone, or probably gone and dropped out or something. But I was a musician and I love music, and I thought, okay, well, if I major in music, I'll actually go to class. Yeah. And it kind of worked. So I show up there, and in my first week of class, I see these college professors teaching music to a bunch of co-eds, and they're dressed nice and they're driving nice cars and they have weekends off and they have summers off, and I'm like, okay, that looks like a good gig. Let me do whatever you got to do to go become a teacher of music at a college. And it started with the undergrad at Towson, but then I moved on and got a master's degree and a doctorate degree from the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University right up the road, because I was on my way to going on and making the big bucks in academia.
Yeah, so you went from Towson to Johns Hopkins, and then to the Peabody Institute. And was there a specific instrument that you played, or jack of all trades? What's the backstory there?
Oh yeah. Well, I played the bassoon mostly because it was a chick magnet.
Oh, is that right?
And it worked. I ended up marrying the hottest bassoon player on the planet, and she still plays bassoon to this day. So yeah, check that box. Bassoon, chick magnet, worked.
I love it. That is funny. You throw me way off with that story. That's great. So you get your doctorate in music. You're on your way to becoming a professor of music, but somehow you get distracted around 2001, or no, really 99, and you found Listen Smart. What was Listen Smart?
Yeah, listensmart.com. That was my first startup, and what was not in the on the LinkedIn profile there is while I was finishing up my doctorate at Peabody and working on my dissertation, so I didn't have to go into classes so much, I was working at a mortgage company and learning a lot about mortgage leads and learning a lot about the internet. We had the whole company set up on a 14.4 modem connected to everybody. And it was, the 90s where the mortgage brokerages were just getting going and made a good bit of money as a part owner of that business, and decided to take some of the winnings from that business and parlay it into an internet startup, which was listensmart.com. And Listen Smart was it was sort of a knockoff or a competitor to a really famous website back then. And your neck of the woods there, Mike, in San Diego, was mp3.com. Okay. And mp3.com, as the domain name might indicate, was where people could go and download MP3s. And so free music was obviously big in the late 90s and the birth of the internet. The thing that made mp3.com a bit unique was that it didn't have any of the music of the major labels. It was all independent artists, because the independent artists owned their own rights, and it allowed them to upload their music and have worldwide distribution on the internet. And so I was one of the first 1,000 artists of mp3.com, and it was the greatest experience ever. Like, I had people listening to my music from all over the world for the first time. Get emails from guys in Saudi Arabia and Texas and Alaska, and I thought it was the greatest thing up until 1999, early 99. mp3.com went public. It was the biggest IPO of the .com era. They raised like $1.2 billion or something like that. And the artist didn't see a penny of it. And so I thought, here we go again. The artist providing all the value, and the big companies are taking all that value and not sharing it with the artists. So the idea was, with listensmart.com, was to rebuild or duplicate mp3.com for independent artists, but to pay the artist 50% of the revenue based on the popularity of the music. And the revenue would be, yes, you guessed it, advertising. Also music publishing on the back end, but that's a whole nother story. So I raised about $1 million here locally from angels that were looking to invest in, the next big .com. And we launched in March of 2000, which is a very unfortunate month to launch. We actually got a ton of press, and we had tens of thousands of bands and artists sign up, and we had lots of traffic to the website, and we got multiple term sheets from VCs. But by April 2000 is when the NASDAQ crashed. But that's actually not what did us in. We were surviving pretty well through the .com crash. It was when Napster was in the headlines of all of the summer of 2000. That's what really did us in. Basically, nobody knew what that meant for online music. And even though we were playing in the world of independent artists who owned their own rights, Napster just froze the space. It was paralyzed. So all the VCs pulled their term sheet, and we lost the ability to keep staying funded. And that's the one crash and burn startup on my scorecard. But learned a lot about online advertising during that time, and was able to parlay that into the next 20 years.
Yeah, and leading that into the loan page, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. The loan page was like, I had a friend who had gotten this thing started. Obviously, I knew a lot about the mortgage industry from my days of running a mortgage company in the mid-90s. And, I knew a lot about online advertising and performance-based pricing. So here's sort of the timeline that I often give, to us, from us old guys, the original internet entrepreneurs is, most of the time we attribute 1995 and the Netscape IPO as the birth of the consumer internet. And people that heard about Netscape and would download the browser and launch it, they'd see ads. Nobody knew how to buy and sell the ads in 95, so they just took the offline pricing model of CPM and charging an advertiser for every impression. And that just made a lot of sense because nobody knew how to buy and sell ads on the internet. But there was a brilliant pair of brothers in Baltimore, Maryland, who became the founders of advertising.com. Mm-hmm. And they were the company that is given credit for being the first company to sell a click instead of an impression. So they evolved the pricing model from CPM to CPC and really gave birth to performance-based pricing in online advertising. And this is back in 1997. And it didn't take long for the advertisers that were buying clicks to say, hey, I love the clicks. It's way better than a raw banner ad that I don't know if a consumer or a user saw. But I don't sell anything online. I'm a mortgage company. I'm an insurance company. I sell home services. So I need somebody to fill out their information, give me their phone number, raise their hand, say I'm interested in what you're selling, so I can contact them by phone and sell them that way. So the pricing model evolved from CPM to CPC, then out to CPA and CPL, which cost per action and cost per lead. And so the ad networks like advertising.com would evolve their performance pricing model out to that performance basis. And it also gave birth to the early pioneers of lead gen like LendingTree, Lower My Bills, NextTag, and all three of those businesses were selling mortgage leads as their primary vertical. And my theory there is because the mortgage industry was used to buying leads before there was an internet. So they would buy leads on a per lead basis from call centers and direct mail shops. So it kind of plugged and played right with the way they were used to paying for marketing. And they would max out, their cost per funded loan was lower with the internet leads than it was anything in the offline channels. So they would max out their spend with LendingTree, Lower My Bills, and NextTag. And I think right around that time, you were one of the guys doing the buying, I think, Mike.
Right.
And so our sales model at theloanpage.com, we were like a little LendingTree. And, our value proposition was very similar, like when banks compete, you win, so that we could sell a shared lead to mortgage companies. And we would drive in mostly affiliate traffic to our website. This is even before we even had landing pages. And if they filled out a form, we would sell it to 4 different mortgage companies. And it was great because the sales model was inbound. Meaning my good friend and future co-founder Joey Liner was our head of sales back then, and the phone would just ring all day with mortgage lenders who had maxed out their budgets with LendingTree and Lower My Bills and NextTag, and then went to the next name on the list, which was the loan page, and would give us a call. So we were just picking up the phone and taking orders, and it was just, it's always better to be lucky than good, and we just captured some wonderful timing, and we had these big juggernauts in LendingTree and Lower My Bills out there paving the way and sort of teaching the market about internet leads, and we just rode in their wake. So we got to $10 million in sales and $3 million in EBITDA in 3 years with 7 employees. I've never seen anything like it.
Oh man, what a great story. What was it like, your first, time trying to find affiliates or advertisers to, drive the traffic to those sites or to your partners? With regards to quality, what was that like?
Yeah, great question. So if you look at that time period of 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, this is before Google AdWords, right? So that eventually became sort of the main pipe or main channel for all lead gen activity because of the high intent nature of a Google search click. So we didn't have that at our beck and call. And display advertising was really tough back then. We would try and do stuff on the advertising.com network and take principal risk on the media buy and buy on CPM basis and CPC and try and make the math work at a cost per lead. And nothing really worked except for one thing, which was the affiliate email channel, which is
Yeah.
ironic because I've come full circle back into that channel, 20 years later. But it was basically finding an email publisher that had a big subscriber list, and we would get them to send our offer at, thelonepage.com, and it would say, when banks compete, you win, or something similar. And if they clicked on the email, they would go to our website, and we just had conversion tracking pixel, and we would pay the email affiliate on every conversion that took place. So most of that whole supply side of our business, as we refer to it, was run by my partner, Jason Goldsmith. I was more in charge of the technology and magic in the middle, and also the demand side, because I could speak the language of a mortgage company.
Yeah. What was quality like? Obviously there weren't a lot of tools back then to monitor fraud or anything like that, or maybe it wasn't even a thing to worry about back then.
Like so many other things, at first the quality was high and there was very little fraud, and then it quickly started spiraling out of control by 2002 and 2003. And I would say back then the concept of a real-time lead, generating and then selling a lead in real time didn't really exist. So everything was kind of in 24-hour batch. And I would say the most unscrupulous affiliates would deliver their leads not via traffic, not via a click to your website, but they would generate the leads on their own form, and then they would put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then they would send you us an Excel spreadsheet once a day. And that's where the fraud became the most pervasive, was just unscrupulous affiliates that would get a CD-ROM of names and addresses and email addresses and sprinkle. And that was the thing. We had a term for it called sprinkling. Like, a lot of the leads were legitimate, but they would sprinkle in these fraudulent ones, because if they did that 20% of the time, they would make 20% more revenue. And it was very difficult to detect. But really, it was that experience of dealing with the different shades of gray and nuances of lead quality and the conversion rate after they were sold that led to the birth and founding of Double Positive to kind of fix that.
Yeah. And I just love that you use the word CD-ROM. They would, provide you a CD. I don't think my kids would even know what a CD-ROM is. So in 2003, you hired a man named Joey Liner.
Yeah.
At the Loan Page to help run sales.
The legendary Joey Liner started as the head of sales at thelonepage.com. That is correct. That was his entrance into the lead gen world that he is now master of.
So you guys continued on for a couple years with the Loan Page. At some point, you figured you saw the problem, you saw some issues. We got to go further down the funnel potentially and help with calls. How did that come about? What did you see? Where was the problem that you saw, and how did you guys come up with Double Positive?
Yeah, so great question. It was a culmination of a number of things. So we were trying to track the performance of these leads down funnel, but it was always difficult to get conversion feedback from the mortgage company customers because they didn't like to let you know who funded a loan and who didn't. But when we did get that data, we could see a little bit more clearly into what affiliates were performing well and which ones weren't. And we wanted to add to that by adding a call center layer of verification before we would send out the leads once a day. And so that was the first sort of iteration of what eventually became the Double Positive live call transfer business, was just a call center for QA on the leads coming through thelonepage.com. But at the same time, what we were starting to hear is that the biggest killer of value of leads across any vendor or provider was contact rate. So, back then, a 30% contact rate was considered good. And that's crazy, because you had 100% of consumers raising their hand and ostensibly saying, call me. So when we had contact with the consumer for a QA call, it just seemed logical to say, hey, let's not hang up, because we're going to kill 70% of the value if we hang up. So why don't we just go ahead and transfer that call as soon as we got them to one of the lead buyers? And so allowed for a sort of a skunkworks R&D experiment for live transfers under the umbrella of the LoanPage.com. And this is after we had sold the LoanPage.com to Battery Ventures at the end of 2003. And that was the first internet lead gen business exit ever, is what I'm told. Been a lot since then.
Yeah, a lot of exits, not always good either.
They're correct.
Well, what do you just let me take a sidestep for a moment, and ask you to put your behavioral economics hat on for a sec. What do you think is leading to a even 40 or 50% contact rate when, as you said, someone is raising their hand and providing their information? Obviously, I think you could probably chalk up some of it to just, mistiming and just not able to get a hold of the person for whatever reason. Do you think a 40% contact rate is reasonable in in the environment of I'm filling out a form and I would like you to call me back, or should it be higher? What is it? What's going on there?
Yeah. So I'll try and go all Dan Ariely and predictably irrational with my answer.
Yeah.
It's about quality, quantity, and cost, and finding a sweet spot in there. So if companies committed to only generating leads that had 100% contact rate, the volume would be very low. Okay, so you actually have to try other type of campaigns, other types of channels to be able to drive up your lead volume. And when doing so, it's going to invariably affect the octane rating of those leads, or the contact rates for as a proxy thereof. And so one of the channels back then that was getting very popular for high volume was, of course, the co-reg path. And Publishers Clearinghouse, PCH.com, still being one of the more famous ones. So they would get the consumer to register and put all their information on the front page to be able to enter the sweepstakes. And then it would just walk them down a series of offers that they could just opt in by clicking one button and be registered for that offer. And so that was great for volume. If you wanted a lot of mortgage leads, you could just get your mortgage lead offer or your mortgage quote offer into the Publishers Clearinghouse reg path, or there's somebody else's reg path. Zoogle was doing a lot of that back then. And it was great for volume, but it brought the conversion rates and the contact rates of those leads way down. Now, there were still nuggets of gold in there, but it just needed a more efficient way of refining it. So that's where the idea of the double positive layer sitting on top of the lead gen layer made a lot of sense, is that we could mine those nuggets of gold cost effectively and not be killing the productivity time of the mortgage originators on the sales side.
Yep. So you spent 10 years at Double Positive. Tell me a little bit about that evolution of Double Positive. You started mortgage, doing calls, went to education, I think. Tell me in your words what the brief evolution of Double Positive.
Sure. So it started in fall of 2004, and Joey was there day one. He was asked to stay with theloanpage.com as a sales executive, but he saw that the lead quality, the data lead quality, was going down so fast, and he had tremendous appetite from his customers for these live call transfers as a delivery model and a pricing model. So he was like, hey, I don't want to keep on selling these data leads, these form fills. I want to come and do what's new for you. And basically we invented it. Like that, there was nobody else selling or delivering live call transfer leads in the fall of 2004. So we had to kind of figure out what we were going to do. And what we figured at first was, all right, the mortgage industry is clearly the most mature industry and it's ready for a change. Insurance was just getting going and EDU was really in its infancy. So the majority of our revenue in the first few years, like 90% plus, was coming out of the mortgage industry. And what we did is we just evolved that pricing model one more layer out, kind of like advertising.com had done years earlier, by going from an impression, CPM, to a click, CPC, to a lead, CPL. We said, okay, instead of delivering that lead in its data form and selling that for $20, let's send it to a call center that we either own or operate or at least manage, and we'll make the call center make contact with the consumer, make sure they're genuinely interested in the offer, make sure they're qualified for the offer beyond what they had otherwise put into the form fill, and then transfer that live call and the lead data to the lead buyer simultaneously, so they're getting the data and the call at the same time, and we'll charge them $100 for a transfer. And it was a better deal. Their cost per funded loan was lower with a $100 live transfer than it was with a $20 internet data lead. And more importantly, we were doing all the work. We were doing all that front end work to make that contact. So what they were buying was a delivery model that had 100% contact rate. and they could go right into sort of the sales and quoting part of their process. And with the loanpage.com, we never raised any outside capital. And it was a great situation. We took advantage of it. We didn't need it because the cash flows and the growth were so good. And I thought I was going to do that all over again with Double Positive. But this call center layer added so much complexity and required so much nuance and handling that I knew we needed a lot more technology. So I decided to raise 3 rounds of venture capital with Double Positive. We did. So we started in 2004. We raised Series A in 2005, Series B 2006, and then a third round in 2007. And right after we had closed the round in 2007, countrywide headlines started hitting every newspaper on the country. And it was the biggest collapse of an industry I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you were there, you had front row seats, Mike. It just collapsed completely around us. So we went from this hyper growth trajectory in going through 2004 to 2007 to a big collapse of our top line revenue right after raising all this, this venture capital. So I had investors sitting around my board table, looking at me cross-eyed saying, how are you going to pull out of this? But somehow we did it. We kind of grabbed ourselves by our bootstraps in 2008 and really got serious about becoming more multi-vertical. And so that's when we brought in Brian Ochiltree, lead gen legend, to stand up our insurance vertical, and lead gen legend Casey Cook to come in for the education vertical and stand that up. And we had to grow sort of brick by brick because we couldn't really raise any more money after what had happened. And from 2008 through, the mid 2000 teens, I guess we got our peak up to $35 million and probably $7 million in EBITDA. And to do that, we had to expand beyond just selling the live call transfers that we had started with. And we became a full service digital agency for one of the biggest lead buyers on the planet. And so then all of a sudden we were managing the full funnel. We were doing display, we were doing search, we were doing social, and managed the entire online budget all the way down to a cost per enrollment for this big particular online school. And, attended every LeadsCon we could and sponsored all the ones we could and grew into a very robust business that got acquired in 2015.
Yeah. So looking back, you said you launched Double Positive in the fall of 2004. So looking at Sean Fenlon in January of 2005, what would you tell him? What advice would you give Sean in 2005 about Double Positive?
Wow. Don't raise venture capital. You don't need to.
Okay.
So, I mean, I say that a little bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
It was such a contrast to go from the loanpage.com where we did not have any outside capital to raising venture capital with Double Positive. And there's no lack of dignity in raising outside capital for sure. It's just that some businesses require it. Like if you're building a software as a service for the enterprise to compete with Salesforce.com, you probably need to raise millions of dollars of venture capital to get that thing going. But in lead gen, performance marketing, a lot of times you can go a long time with no outside funding or very little outside funding, and then raise funds at a much bigger valuation much later when you can sell much less equity, experience much less dilution and maintain much more control. So that would have been sort of the lesson learned from there. Is I think we raised outside capital too soon. I think we could have kept growing the business organically and pushed out any kind of capital raise to later stages.
That's good advice. Let me ask you a more important question. What is the key to the universe?
The ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything is, wait for it, 42.
So 42 is it. You in 2015 you started Meta42. What is that?
Yeah. Just a cool word. No, there's something there. Like I had, I mentioned the tough time with Double Positive when the mortgage industry melted down and then the financial crisis right behind it. Well, we had just had 3 kids in 4 years during that time. I thought I was in the worst position of anybody on the planet, and I fell in love with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as a way to kind of just change my perspective about how things were going for me. So the beginning of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the main character, Arthur Dent, is laying in front of a bulldozer because the bulldozer is trying to destroy his house to make room for an expressway. And he's on the phone trying to get this all sorted out. And he's thinking he's got the worst possible situation in the world. And it turns out what he didn't know is that a Vogon destructor fleet had been sent to planet Earth to blow up the planet to make room for a hyperspace expressway. So this author, Douglas Adams, had great ways of juxtaposing scale and perspective. And it made me realize, okay, I probably don't have it all that bad. So it really helped me through, a tough time through laughter and humor. And, I got known for being sort of obsessed with the number 42 from that book and that movie at Double Positive. So when I was trying to think of a new company name after Double Positive that would be sort of a beacon to let everybody know who was involved with it, I certainly wanted to put 42 in there. And the meta was the notion that I didn't want to have software or technology as what we sold per se, but we wanted to have meta technology that took advantage of the best technologies out there. So that's the meta portion of the word, and 42 it just fit pretty nicely. And also it plugged it into the other company that started at the same time, Abovo.
Right. So what are the distinctions between the two? Is Meta42 a parent company of Abovo 42? What is the?
Yeah, so the structure is Abovo 42 Corporation, which is a Delaware C Corp, is the mothership, and Meta42 LLC is a wholly owned subsidiary of Abovo. And basically, the reason I started, you got to be a little bit crazy to work in lead gen and online performance marketing, but you got to be particularly crazy to start 2 new startups at the exact same time. So, and literally that's what happened is Double Positive was acquired on March 23rd of 2015, and I retired for 10 days. Exactly 10 days later was April 2nd, 4/2. So, of course, I filed for Abovo 42 Corporation and Meta42 that same day. And here was my logic is, the acquisition of Double Positive represented my second lead gen exit. And I come to see the good and the bad and the ugly and everything in between about lead gen. It's certainly good for getting started without a lot of capital. It's certainly good for growth, hyper growth, like 100% a year type growth. And it's even great for cash flow margins when done correctly. What it's really not great for is a big exit, at least a big valuation or multiple. And what I started to see is looking around the industry, the loanpage.com got a very low EBITDA multiple. But again, it was the first one, so I didn't know if that was going to be the norm. But I started to see around the industry, businesses getting sold for 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 times EBITDA if they were super special or had some hyper growth. Whereas other types of businesses, whether it be SaaS or anything to do with consumer tech, they were getting 5 and 10 times their top line multiple. And, over time, I've come to realize this is not irrational. It actually is rational why those types of businesses get higher multiples. But I wanted to, if this is going to be my 4th startup and, I'm in my 50s now, for goodness sake. So I figured I got to get it right this time. So I wanted to do something in consumer tech. And that was the idea for Abovo, which I can talk about. But most consumer tech, like software as a service, does require a bunch of venture capital to get started. And, to fund the losses in the early days of trying to get product market fit and get traction with consumers and users. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to try and self-fund this consumer tech, but there was no aspect of the Abovo business that I could see that could generate revenue in its early stages. But I knew how to build an online marketing and lead gen company, so that was the idea behind Meta42. We'll grow Meta42 as sort of a next generation form of online marketing and lead gen, and take the cash flows that we produce with Meta42. We're going to, the plan is to grow very quickly and to take the cash flows that we produce from Meta42 and use those cash flows to fund Abovo rather than going in and raising outside venture capital in the early stage like I've done before. And so we're executing on that plan pretty well. I like to say that we split our time 90-40. between Meta42 and Abovo these days. But we have an internal number that we're tracking to. And once we get over that monthly revenue threshold, we'll start hiring people that will be working on the Abovo side exclusively. So right now we're splitting all of our time and just trying to work to get that Meta42 revenue up to this threshold that we're targeting.
So how does email become a social sharing tool?
Yeah, isn't that funny? Like here, we grew up in this era of social media, and it just took over everybody, and all of Silicon Valley left email behind. Yeah. Like nobody ever bothered to make email social, so it was kind of trapped in this little silo, right? Like you could send email to multiple people, but you couldn't share an email the way we think of sharing online these days. And, the idea of it came to me kind of circuitously. In the double positive days, I was doing a lot of travel. And, I was introduced by Brian Ochiltree, this cool technology called TripIt. Did you ever use TripIt?
Yeah, I used TripIt, yes.
Yeah, so I was blown away. This must have been 2011 or something. And I used to do so much travel that I would forward my wife all of the reservation emails I would get from the airline and the rental car and the hotel, so she could see where I was or where I was going. And with TripIt, you just would forward your reservation email and it would scrape it and it would build an itinerary for you. And it would include all the emails that you forwarded to it into the itinerary. Yeah. And I just thought it was so brilliant because you didn't have to sign up for it. And everybody was getting reservation and confirmation emails. So I started becoming a power user of it. And I was just blown away by how simple you could become a user because you didn't have any signups. And then also how simple it was just to be able to use the service without having to learn to do anything new. So I started thinking, all right, well, extend that logic. Like what else could you do by sending or forwarding an email? And much like you, Mike, I've been a blogger for a long time, but I don't write a lick of code. So it's always been to have websites online or do blogging online without being, technical. It's always been frustrating and complicated. Even today, even with WordPress, I still have to have my Bluehost account. And I have to add some third-party software to protect it, and got to get my DNS all set up right. And that's just not for the faint of heart. So I started thinking, instead of just building an itinerary from hotel email reservations, what if we just published the entire email as an HTML web page, and use the email client as like the content creator or the content management system? And, at that point I was doing some math and I was realizing that, out of all the people I knew that were internet users, maybe 1 or 2% actually knew how to publish a page of content on the internet. But 100% of the people I knew how to send or forward an email, including my mom, at 70 years old, who has no problem adding attachments and links and GIFs and colored fonts. And, she really has become a master of email, where she's not really a master of any other form of internet technology. So if I could build a technology that would allow my mom to publish a page of content on the internet using her email, that would be, radically enabling technology. And that was the vision behind the consumer tech of Abovo.
So Abovo, so what's your vision for that? I mean, so you see it as a publishing platform for all types of content. You alluded to the blogging and all sorts of things, but how is it being used now? I went through there the other day and I saw a whole conversation on some sports going back and forth via email.
Abovo groups is what you saw there. Yeah, it was. We're trying to take a philosophy. Like as soon as we launched Abovo in September of 2015, everybody would say, "Hey, this is really cool. What's the use case? How would I use it?" Right. And we've been trying to give the same answer that Twitter founders gave back after their big announcement at South by Southwest years ago. Which is, with Twitter, they did their demo at South by Southwest, and their friends would come up and say, "Hey, this is great. How would I use Twitter?" And their answer was, "We don't know yet. We're just building this kind of broad, enabling, horizontal technology, and then we're going to watch our users and see how they use it before we figure out the killer use case or what features to add next, that sort of thing." And so what's interesting is because of that philosophy, the retweet and the hashtag were invented by Twitter users, not by a Twitter product manager. So that's been a lot of what we've been trying to think of with Abovo 1.0. Okay, this technology never existed before, where you could publish a page of content just by sending or forwarding any email. And so we kind of went with that for a while, and we were watching, and we saw people using it like a super simple blog for their email. And then they would often take the page, the URL to the page they created, and they would often share that on their other social timelines. So we got, super simple sharing buttons for LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter down at the bottom of every post. But along the way, so clearly this put us in the social media space. So I tried to get really, really smart about what was going on in there. And of course, you've got your leaders with Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, et cetera. And I saw that all these companies had enormous growth because of the social network effect. But in all those social networks, you knew the other people or the other brands on the other side of your network. And I saw one social media property that continued to grow and never seemed to hiccup and never seemed to have a decline or a plateau. And it was Reddit. And Reddit, was founded in 2004, back when Double Positive got started, and it went through a sale and all sorts of shakeups and changes. But one thing that stayed steady the whole time is this growth, so that by the time 2016 happened, they were a top 4 internet website in terms of traffic domestically. I mean, and 30, 40% of the people I would talk to had never even heard of them. And here they were, a top 4 website. And their secret, I don't want to call it a secret, but their differentiator was you didn't know the other people using Reddit because it was all anonymous usernames. What you did know is you were gathered around a shared topic of interest in their subreddits. And so I started becoming a Reddit user, I don't know, early 2000s, 10s or something like that. And I got to tell you, I try hard. There's a number of subreddits that I participate in, and I try and post good stuff and leave, pithy comments. And I get trolled and I get downvoted, and it's intimidating. And I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And so it's not an environment for the faint of heart. And then I even went even further, and I became the moderator of a subreddit just to see what that was like. And that was even more complicated, more stressful. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, in the social media space, the perpetual grower to top website traffic was Reddit, all based on this shared topic of interest and not knowing who the other users were in a social network, type of paradigm or construct. So we decided to take the original Abovo technology as sort of the core enabling technology to build Abovo groups. And Abovo groups is a lot like if anybody's ever been on a major domo listserv, where you do everything by email. You control the group moderators and the content and the posts, and you can delete and you can ban users from the group. The only difference is all that email traffic is now being archived on the web. And the way a group is formed, the original way to use Abovo was to send or forward any email to post at Abovo. And now you can do fill in the blank at Abovo to form a new group. So I'm a huge Redskins fan. So the very first Abovo group ever was Redskins at Abovo.co. And so when I sent that first email, the system saw that that was the first time that group was being used or sent to. So it automatically or systematically forms the subdomain redskins.abovo.co and posts my email there the way it would with the original technology. And now somebody can come along and they can subscribe to that group, or they can just lurk, or they could reply to it like you would normally reply to an email. And so it's all of a sudden it's a subreddit that is as simple as sending or forwarding any email without any of all that intimidating stuff that I was describing earlier. So I think what you were seeing there was probably the Orioles group or something like that, where we have a lot of folks that are chiming in on that group, and the first person that posts to the group and forms the group becomes the moderator, and they can invite other people to participate as simply as just putting their emails in the to or the CC line. So that automatically invites them to use the group, and of course they can decline the invitation if they want to. But it's asking the users of Abovo to not learn to do anything new. Anything that they're doing, everything that they do on Abovo is something that they're probably doing 100 times a day already on their own, which is sending or forwarding emails and clicking on emails and adding people in the to and from field.
In 2 minutes, can you tell us a little bit about what Meta42 is doing with email marketing?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty exciting. So obviously I've spent the majority of this 20-year career in performance marketing and lead gen down at the bottom of the funnel, down where the leads are captured and then the live call transfers are generated. And then, of course, the sales, the sales with the consumer-facing sales force. Well, I have the luxury of being way up top in the funnel now as a publisher with Meta42. And essentially, we're a publisher of newsletters. And what we have found is the only effective way to do email marketing is to make sure that your marketing message gets into the inbox of the big email service providers, or the ISPs, really. So Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, AOL, they all have very sophisticated algorithms as to what will go into an inbox and what will go into a junk folder. And we've found that every domain that you use to send emails on develops a reputation with all of those ISPs, and they have a score. And so what you want to be is have your reputation score above a certain threshold so that all the emails you send go into the inbox, including the marketing messages. And so we've explored different ways of sending newsletters that are likely to engage our users. And so when they open and click on a newsletter that we send to them, it puts our domain sending score very high. And that way we're able to send a marketing message right behind it and get into the inbox because of the high score that the newsletter generated for us. So we're at a point now where we're happily sending 15 million emails a day, and we're getting most of those into the inbox because of the work that we did with newsletters in the first place to develop those good reputations. And what we're hearing from our advertisers, the advertisers are buying clicks from us on a performance basis. So the delivery model is a click. So when we send a marketing message and we're able to get into a user's inbox, if they click on that offer, they're going to go to the advertiser's landing page. So that's the delivery model. We're handing them off vis-a-vis the click. But we're allowing them, at least in our early days, we're allowing them to performance price that any way they want. We're letting them name their pricing model and also name their price anytime. So if they want to pay per click, that's fine. If they want to pay per lead or per action, that's fine. They want to do a rev share, that's fine. Our only requirement is that we need to know about the conversion and the value of a conversion in real time vis-a-vis a pixel fire. And so it's worked really well. And what we're hearing from the advertisers is that the performance of the clicks that they buy from our email marketing is on par with that of paid search. They say it's not quite as good as natural search, but they say it's way better than display and social and so many of the other channels from a post-click conversion rate standpoint. And they're allowed to right price it and change it every day. And so basically we're kind of like Google AdWords. We're just not real time. We're just letting them change their price once a day. And it's crossed all industries because anybody can have an offer in an email message. And basically, we're looking to see how much revenue we generated from each offer for every 1,000 emails we sent of that offer. And we stack, rank, and prioritize by the offers that are performing the best for us. So in that regard, I can have a mortgage offer competing against an insurance offer, competing against an education offer, competing against Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. So it's sort of a blissful place to be when you can be multi-vertical on the sell side and not worry about industry or vertical concentration.
Yeah, definitely. I honestly, we could probably talk for another hour because I got so many other things to talk to you about, but unfortunately we got to cut it off here.
Sure.
I'm gonna invite you back again. Hopefully we can catch back up because there really is a lot to talk about within lead gen that we didn't get to touch on today. Yeah. I will reach out to you again to do that. But if anybody wants to find out more about Meta42 and obviously Bovo42, they can go to, with regards to Bovo, they can go to bovo.co.
Correct.
And then Meta42.
Meta42.co as well.
Okay, perfect. Meta42.co. And then they can also find you on LinkedIn, Sean Fenlon, Fenlon. At LinkedIn, and reach out to you there. I really thank you for coming in and just sort of sharing with us your the whole evolution from a musician to the maestro of lead gen and now onto the email expert. So I appreciate it, Sean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure, and I have to give you all the credit for the maestro moniker.
I tried to go back and look for that article, on Wayback Machine, and I couldn't dig it up. I'm gonna look for that because I want to know the exact date and time because I pulled it out from something. I noticed that you were a musician, and I said, the maestro of lead gen, and I'm glad it stuck. So I'm gonna, whether or not. I'm pretty certain I came up with it. If I didn't, I'm going to take it anyways.
No, you definitely did. It was your blog post after I won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. It was a very nice congratulatory blog post. Yeah. And you referred to me as the maestro, and I grabbed it and stuck with it. And I might have to start paying you royalties or something.
I wouldn't mind that. I'll take you up on that. All right, Sean. Thanks a lot for joining us, and I will talk with you soon.
Great. Take care, Mike. Talk to you soon.